watching the monkey.
I got it. Hello, folks. Welcome back to another episode of The Art of Being with the ACT Matrix. I'm one of your hosts, Kevin, and somewhere on the
Phil,
screen,
the other co-host.
There's Phil, the other co-host, and we have Evan Parks with us today. And we'll get to him in just a moment. But Phil always wants to throw in a plug for. What do you plug, Phil?
Well, we plug our sponsor, Kevin, which is basically the ACT Matrix certification program, folks.
Yeah.
And we really invite all of you to get on board and join us. We're building a community of like-minded folks who want to tune in and be a part of something, get the word out about the Matrix. Also would give you professional standing within your own community. And the way it works is it's free, folks. All you got to do is go to the ACT Matrix Academy and sign up, and you are in. And
you mean the certification?
Yeah, certification part. Yeah.
Well, no. Certification isn't free.
No. But I mean to get in and start to begin the process.
The training's free.
Cost anything to get trained, exactly.
Right,
Certification, that is something that we do charge a fee
that's
for.
That's how we pay the
expenses. Right.
Yes, that's how we pay the bills.
Yeah, that's how we pay our bills.
Okay.
So a little bit about us.
Well, that's enough about us.
Yeah.
Now let's talk about Evan and what he's up to. He's up in Michigan, right?
Yes, Grand Rapids, Michigan.
Tell us about what you do and your art of being.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. There's a lot to cover just in those questions right there. I work at Mary Freebed Rehabilitation Hospital in Grand Rapids, Michigan. And I am a part of a specialized clinic that is called the Pain Rehabilitation Program. And we have a 10-week and a 12-week program that helps people who have chronic pain learn how to manage their pain. And our specialty is helping people who have been through multiple forms of pain management, treatment, surgery, injections, medication, to really learn how to manage their pain on their own, get off their medications, and to function well enough so that they never have to come back to see us again. And what I'm really interested in talking about is the use of ACT principles, because our entire psychology approach to working with patients is to use ACT. And so we have a number of things that we're doing with ACT here, and it is really, really important. And myself, I have very specific interest in the use of the matrix. And that is what has drawn me to Kevin, because I have learned a great deal from what he presents and what he's written, and just wanted to share a little bit about how neat that translates into the work that we do.
Cool.
Neat. Cool. All right. So I like what you said, Evan, is like you're in the business of putting yourself out of business.
Yes.
Yeah.
We tell that people right up front, and they're surprised, because usually the pain approaches that they've gone through really create a sense of dependence.
Yep.
Very much so.
Yeah. And so one of the things that we see in healthcare that's unfortunate is healthcare seems to be oriented, number one, towards symptom reduction rather than health promotion. And we are really trying to promote health. Better functioning is our goal. And the second thing that we see in the healthcare system is that patients are passive. We suggest to the people that we're talking with that they're often treated like sheep. They are basically meeting with a physician or healthcare professional for just a few minutes. Maybe a prescription is written, nothing is explained, no education is provided, and they're expected to just follow along passively with that approach. And they end up really not knowing what their condition is, or why that approach is even supposed to help, or what it's supposed to do. And people really don't feel free to ask questions. And what we want to do is just the polar opposite of that. We want to help people to learn how to be healthy, and we want people to understand.
Yeah. Excellent.
Wow. And how do you go about doing that?
Well, Kevin, we start off with pain education. We call it pain neuroscience education. To give you the full title, we don't always use the word neuroscience with our folks, but that's what we're doing. So our program is multidisciplinary, interdisciplinary, really. And we have occupational therapists, physical therapists, nursing, medical staff, and then psychology. And so as we begin meeting with people, we do initial evaluation, appropriateness for the program, what other kind of conditions do we need to be concerned about. But right away, right in that evaluation, there are opportunities as people explain some of the treatment that they've gone through and what they're going through currently in their life. We begin to start introducing ideas, different ways of looking at things. And so in the pain psychology part, what we really do is give an explanation of how chronic pain seems to develop from what we understand. It's not a perfect model, but we spend quite a bit of time just educating people about the difference between acute pain and chronic pain. And the model that we have really focuses in on the central nervous system, the brain and the spinal cord. Most people and most healthcare professionals assume that pain has its origin in our nerve endings. We have different kind of nerve endings that are detecting danger. We have nerve endings that tell us there's heat damage, or there's a cut, tissue damage, inflammation, a chemical, mechanical pressure. Those 5 types of things are being monitored by about 43 miles of peripheral nerves throughout the body. And it's all being sent up to this spinal cord into the brain. And what we typically think, and this is one of the misconceptions that people come in with, is that those nerve endings are the origin of pain. And so medical treatment that generally is oriented toward that is trying to do things to those nerve endings, including cutting them, burning them, all kinds of things, doing intervention at the nerve ending site. And our approach is quite different. So when we do the pain neuroscience education, we say, well, what if the pain actually wasn't coming from the nerve endings? What if it was just information about change that was coming from those nerve endings, and that your brain actually had to figure out, is that information about change worth generating an output? So that's a real simple overview of this pain neuroscience education, is that we have sensory input, we have analysis, and then we have sensory output. And so the question then is, what if the brain's analysis is actually not operating with the best information? Because we all know that analysis is only as good as the input that it's getting. And what if the brain's coming up with conclusions that we need pain, when in fact we might not be needing pain? And there is, in that, the little summary is kind of the essence of where we begin to go. So one of the things that happens as we begin this kind of dialogue with patients is they have questions. And one of the more common ones is, why hasn't anybody ever told me that? And so we don't actually have an answer to that.
Yep.
We're not sure why people haven't been told that. But we feel that it's in part because from what we see of medical education, that a lot of healthcare providers are not given that information themselves. So they're not aware of that.
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah.
So that's all during the assessment.
Well, that begins with sometimes that
the
discussion begins because people are wondering, well, what's going to be different about your approach?
Yeah.
They've been to a dozen, sometimes
they've
a
been
dozen
all
different
up and
places.
down the place, right? Mm-hmm.
Right. And they're like, well, what's going to be different here?
Yeah.
And so that's in a nutshell, something that we can share pretty quickly to people.
Yeah.
And the neat thing about that is it begins to plant, I think, a seed of doubt. And within that doubt, it is also a seed of hope. Mm-hmm. Hope is essential, I think, for the kind of transformation to take place that we're hoping, that we want to see in people's lives. And as people begin to get the sense that maybe there's a different way of looking at this, maybe there's a different approach, they begin, to act differently toward their situation that they're in.
Wow. Yeah. And you said it was 10 or 12 weeks?
Yeah, the 12 weeks is for those patients that we have coming in that are on high levels of opioids.
Oh, okay.
So about 40% of the people that we have coming into our program are on pretty significant levels of opioids. Mm-hmm. And weaning them off of their opioids is a process.
Yep.
And it takes just a bit longer than the 10 weeks.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's uncomfortable. It's a challenge. And people literally begin to wake up and, come into feeling like they are alive again about halfway through. And because of the high level of opioids right at the beginning of the program, a lot of the information that we present isn't remembered. People aren't processing that information.
Yeah. Got it.
So we almost have to do a restart halfway through when they wake up. They're like, oh, I can think now.
Yeah. You're making me think of that movie Awakenings old years ago.
Oh, yeah.
They gave them the drug and then...
Yeah, the work.
Except it's the opposite. You're taking that away, like, oh.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, their digestive system comes back online, and their sleep gets regulated better. Their mood gets regulated better. So many things. Hormones, begin to flow like they should, and so it is a remarkable transformation as people go off.
Now, is this an intensive outpatient program?
Yes, it is.
Okay. So they come in, so they're weaning off of opioids on an outpatient basis.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And so 60% of the people are not coming in, with that kind of additional challenge. They are people who have had multiple surgeries, maybe have chronic regional pain syndrome, CRPS, phantom limb. We have quite a few people, functional neurological disorders, which is, quite an overlap with our chronic pain population as well. And so there's a variety of people that are coming in with pain. Low back pain, as you probably know, is the most common.
Yes.
Neck, cervical, and headache, migraine would be the second most common. But what we see, since people have really been through the ringer with multiple forms of treatment and surgery, multiple surgeries, is we just call multi-site pain, because somebody starts off with a bad back and they end up with a bad shoulder and they end up with a bad knee, and they're working a full-time job. They're a truck driver, they're in a factory, they're a teacher on their feet, they're a healthcare professional, a nurse, handling, heavy patients, those people who are, physically demanding lines of work, are prone to injury.
Yes.
Sure.
Wow. And so they come, how often do they come in?
Our program is set up so that people are here 2 to 3 times per week,
Okay.
for 2 to 4 hours at a time.
Well, that is intense.
Yeah, that's pretty intensive.
Yeah, so we describe it as a part-time job, because every discipline that meets with a patient is going to give homework. So we give lots of exercises and worksheets, and I'm working on breathing exercises and mindfulness things. So all of that has to get fit into the life that these people have, and it really takes a bit of work. So people are using FMLA, if they're employed, to be able to drop back maybe 10, 15 hours off their normal work week to be here, or if they're not currently employed, or if they're on disability or workman's comp, then we have this window of time before they get back to work to get them in shape.
Yes.
Solidify things, kind of, right? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and I think we mentioned your goal is to put yourself out of business.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how have you been doing putting yourself out of business?
We are doing well.
All right.
Yeah, we have a very, very good outcome.
Nice.
We're successful at getting people off of their narcotics, or significantly reducing their use of narcotics. We're showing good improvement in mood, in functioning, sleep, and reported distress, global sense of health. These measures that we're using are promise measures, if you're familiar with them, that are used widely in research. So we're able to track, as they come into the program and as they leave the program, pre and post, and then we have follow-up, and we're getting now into a whole new way of sending out outcome surveys, even 6 months and further after, to see, how are people maintaining their gain.
Let's see what's happening over time, right?
Yeah, because there's a greater and greater need for data on effectiveness of programs like this, and there's such a need for establishing, that an approach like this is cost effective, and very, very effective for the patient. There's different drivers, insurance companies, of course, and employers, but at the bottom line, what we're concerned is the patient, and people being able to get back to the life that they want.
Yep. And that is way cool. All right. So, well, you have good news on the pain management front. I noticed, Phil knows, I did a couple of pain management programs back before I did this, full time, whatever I do this. And I've talked to several around the country and around the world, for that matter. And it's always the same story. They're dealing with people who have had multiple surgeries, multiple interventions, the program that they're in is the 10th, 12th, or 14th or whatever in line. You think this will ever get moved up to the front of the line? Or toward the front of the line?
Yeah. Well, so much work could be done in terms of prevention.
Yep.
For every dollar that is spent on healthcare, which is basically the treatment of symptoms, 10 cents is spent on prevention.
10 cents.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
And that's stats. You got stats on that.
Yeah.
Wow.
Interesting.
Yeah. So it's a huge need. And, the use of the matrix to, introduce principles is a no-brainer when it comes to doing preventive type of work.
That's sort of handy, isn't it?
Yeah. You give people a tool.
Yep.
Now, I did, as a small ray of hope, many years ago, I saw a young primary care physician who was working with me and others, and would actually draw the matrix during exams and such. Would talk with them. So every once in a while you get a primary care physician that will get flexible and use this kind of stuff. And,
sure.
And it was he was very effective at it, actually.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. What we see, Kevin, is that among physicians, even nurses, physical therapists, people are uncomfortable talking about something they think is outside their discipline.
Yes.
Yep.
And even though we are taught in school a biopsychosocial model, in practice, it's really just a biological.
They drop off the other stuff.
Yeah, mechanical.
Yeah, right.
Let's look for the mechanics of this. And it's like, oh, this person is going through a horrendous transition in their life. They've had a loss. They've had a job, conflict. They've had, other things, the whole research that's being done right now with adverse childhood events, for example. Even though that's getting elevated, people still aren't being asked, about their adverse childhood events. And even when it is being, maybe asked on a form, there isn't that comfort that a healthcare professional has of saying, hey, I see you have, a score of 4 or 5 on your ACE little survey that we gave. How are you doing with some of those things that you've gone through in your life?
Yeah.
But we know this, that just by asking that one question reduces healthcare costs.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow.
That's
you got data on that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So just by asking that question.
Just by asking.
How you doing?
How you doing?
No, man, there's a lot to be unpacked there.
Oh yeah, my brain's spinning right now just thinking about that.
Well, we've got the observer self thing going.
Yeah, right. Perspective taking for sure.
Perspective taking for sure, but then you also have the empathy thing going, that somebody's actually cared about you enough to ask.
Yeah.
Right.
So that's getting in there for sure.
Right. Yep.
Simple question, extraordinarily simple question that makes a difference.
It is. And so you both have experienced this, I'm sure, where you're talking with somebody who maybe is in the later years of their life, have gone through years and years of physician visits and hospitalizations and things like that, and you ask them, maybe in an interview or initial session about a little bit about their background, and they'll say something after a pause. Well, I've never told anybody this, but it's like, how could somebody go through 70 or 80 years of healthcare?
I know.
It's amazing.
I'm laughing because
it's amazing, Evan.
Yes, I've heard it dozens of. It's quite striking. Sort of similar, But so a reaction that we get, and you may know that we tend to start the matrix with the question, who's important to you?
Yeah, right.
And we ask people that. And how many times people will say, wow, nobody's ever asked me that before. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
You know?
Oh, most certainly. Yeah, I have seen in your podcast that you have with other people that you're interviewing, these other folks out teaching the matrix and principles. That initial question that we begin with, what's important to you, is incredible in terms of its power to get people to stop and think about something that they really have not. And it is no longer surprising to me, but on the other hand, it is.
Yeah. Well, and it fits in right with what you're saying at the beginning about you're leading with a question that really is pointing at health promotion, and you're not leading with a question that's pointing at symptom reduction.
Right.
Just that difference right there is a fantastic difference.
It's literally 180 degrees out of phase with the usual, what's wrong with you, what's hurting, whatever, and then we'll go and we'll fix that. We'll go for the fix of what's hurting. And instead, hey, well, we got a lot of stuff we can do here, but let's make sure it fits with your life.
Yeah.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
Right. And so one of the answers that I'll get pretty regularly is, what's important to me is, reducing my pain.
Yeah.
Yep. Oh, yeah.
Yep.
So that is an open door for me to then ask, well, what would you do?
Bingo.
I heard this one.
Yeah. If you could have your reduction of pain, what would you be doing?
Yeah. And then they go, oh, well, I thought of that.
Well, and that's it, because, and folks that know, I've been around the pain clinics quite a bit, and that question is so important because people are usually only focused on reduction. They're not focused on, and there's nothing wrong with reducing pain. That's fine. It's just in the service of what? So you can go to a ball game with your kid. What's the purpose of the reduction? Because now that's really a different way of thinking about it. Because if you're just sitting around in your easy chair thinking, gee, is my pain reduced? I'm not sure if it's reduced or not. And that's really all you're focused on.
Yeah.
Versus, is it modified enough that I can go do something? Well, that's really a different question.
It is.
A lot of us know we can go do something with a little less pain.
Right. And when people have been in chronic pain for 10 years or more, I sense that people have given up trying to even picture an alternative to suffering. So it is something I really tread lightly with as people struggle with that. I don't want to, create a whole bunch of distress because it's so upsetting for them. But I'll gently go with them, to that place of trying to even hope again, because that's what those values represent, is hope. That they could do something, and people legitimately have given up trying to picture that future that is different than what their present is.
Yeah.
That comes to mind something Phil and I talk about. And you do this a lot with people in the lower left quadrant of the matrix. Folks that are new to this know that when we're talking about the matrix, there's senses at the top, mind at the bottom.
I'll put that up.
Well, if you're on YouTube, you can see
there we go.
Thing. Over to the right is toward who and what's important to you, and over to the left is moving away from stuff like pain, by the way.
Yep.
What kind of things do you do to try to get rid of pain or depression or, sadness, whatever, yucky stuff. And so the lower left quadrant, something that people will mention is that, well, you know what? I just don't think I'm good enough. I seem to be getting the message a lot that I'm not good enough.
Yeah.
Well, if you put this in, and this just occurred to me. So I imagine if you're sitting around in pain and your life has become very small because, as the result of all of it, that may be really pounding on you, is that you truly aren't good enough now. Really.
Yeah.
And all the stuff that you see in TV commercials and stuff that is really designed to say, hey, you're not good enough. And if you buy this product, you just might be good enough.
Yep.
So when they get those messages, that's really tearing up on them, isn't it?
Hammers them down.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, and it also feeds into, the advertising itself feeds into another false narrative that pain-free living is an option for you.
Yep.
And that's not what we're selling at the pain center either, which is an adjustment for some of our folks as they go through.
True, right.
What we are focused on is improvement in functioning.
Yeah.
Yes.
Got it.
And ultimately being able to do what's important to you is what generates a deep sense of meaning and satisfaction. And that will involve bringing along with us our discomfort.
Yep. Whoa, now you're talking matrix talk.
You just did it. Yep. You just did the loop.
Well, you go do stuff in the upper right quadrant. It's sorted into the upper right.
Yeah.
And all the while you're having stuff in the lower left quadrant. That's the nature of things.
It is.
I don't know of anybody that's just getting a free ride up there in the upper right.
No.
There's trials and tribulations and pain and all kinds of stuff coming along with you as you're moving toward who and what's important to you. And pain can be one of those things.
It sure can.
Right. And,
it sure can.
Yeah. So, and that and by the way, folks, that's the easy way or one of the easy ways of thinking about acceptance and commitment, training and therapy. The acceptance is you accept the stuff that's showing up in the lower left quadrant.
Right.
And while you just go ahead and do the stuff in the upper right quadrant, there you go.
It looks like that.
Bill's got it. And by the way, that is the working definition of psychological flexibility. Mm-hmm. The ability to have what we call yucky stuff like pain and go ahead and do stuff toward who and what's important to you. And so there you go. You get a little ACT lesson in here. Because sometimes people say, gee, what is that thing of psychological flexibility? Well, that's the behavioral definition is that you can have unwanted stuff, and instead of spending all of your waking hours trying to get rid of that stuff, you'll just go ahead and say, hey, I'm just going to have some of it. Go ahead and do something. Yeah. And that little sentence that I just said is why ACT is relatively popular or becoming more and more popular in pain management. It's because that's what you're really up to. Pain-free is not the deal.
Yes.
That's not the deal.
Nope.
It just can't be the deal.
Yep.
Because even if you got it for a little while, something will happen. You'll try nothing else, you'll get old. I'm right at 64 and I don't make a move without a little bit of pain. So it comes with the neighborhood, you know.
It sure does.
So this is cool.
Yeah.
So how do people get a hold of you if somebody is local?
Yeah. So
in your area, you know, or they want to travel or whatever.
Right. Well, a couple things is our pain rehabilitation program is spreading through our hospital purchasing other outpatient clinics, hospital units.
Got it.
And so we now have a replication of our program in Holland, Michigan, Kalamazoo, Michigan, Troy, Michigan, Traverse City, Michigan.
Wow.
And yeah, so we are expanding. So we think we have a pretty good approach that we want to see replicated in other places. So a part of that is getting ACT trained psychologists and getting them on board. We in the location where I am at right here, we have 6 psychologists that work with me, and so we have a busy program just right here. And
you do,
yeah. So our hospital in the last year and a half or so had built a motel or hotel. I forget what you would call a hotel. That's a part of the hospital for patients who are coming from out of town, out of state.
I see.
And they
coming from all over.
Are coming to be able to stay, and they can.
So you really can do
day
treatment, right? They can go back to their hotel room and come back to see you,
right?
Wow, now that's cool.
Yeah.
Yes.
So you'll in our emails, and folks know that, like, if you're watching this on YouTube, I'll put any link that Evan sends us in the YouTube.
Yeah.
And I'll also put it in the description in the podcast feed, and it'll show up, and you could probably click on a link or something. And because I know that most people that listen to this will either have pain or know somebody
or will be in pain at some point in the future.
Yes,
this stuff gets around.
Yeah, it does.
And in that, they might be listening to it 10 years from now, and I hope your program is still going 10 years.
Me
from
too.
now. And they can click on it and find it and go, and then if nothing else, also learn what you're doing, so they can, do some of it wherever they are in the world.
Right.
That's another thing about pain. It's all over the world. Anywhere humans are, there it is.
Yeah.
And that's so cool. Wow, this is, my gosh.
Yeah.
You have a huge, robust program.
Yeah, you are doing some great stuff there. And I love the informed consent aspect of it, Evan, what you're talking about. Like, people don't get informed consent when they go to their healthcare provider. They get told what to do, and the time that you spend kind of laying it out for them and really educating people and treating people like, that they can make informed decisions for themselves is such a game changer, I think, in the long run.
Yeah, we have a long way to go to switch things around to that, but Evan's helping.
Yeah.
Yeah. It is.
It really is. Wow. Oh, yeah. And folks, just know that if you can get a chance, try out just doing a quick run around the matrix diagram when you talk to somebody. Phil's had preschoolers doing it. Okay, so this is not in its raw form. It's just a way of showing people how they're being human. That's all. Hey, let's take a look at how you're being human, and you just run people through it. And they go, wow, isn't that an interesting way of looking at things?
Yeah.
And so primary care physicians and surgeons and everybody of all kinds of ilks can use it to do that with.
Right.
And then start, and something that comes up along a lot on this podcast too is, believe it or not, the people will, shouldn't say it that way, people will feel heard.
Yeah.
And I know when I go to my primary care, sometimes I walk out and I'm not so sure I was heard. I'm not so sure about that. And if you go through the diagram with somebody, it's almost guaranteed that they're going to be heard.
Yeah, they're going to walk out feeling heard.
Right. Yeah. They're going to go, oh, okay, that person heard what I was talking about. Cool. Yeah. And that's a whole lot better place to start health promotion from.
It is.
Right.
It is. It begins with trust.
Yeah.
Yes.
Very
And,
much so.
and trust begins with, we're listening to each other.
Yeah, it sure does.
Right. And and you walk out and you're going, man, I'm just not sure.
Yeah. Evan, Kevin and I call these things human to human conversations,
Exactly. Right. And it's this diagram is just a simple way of doing that. Now you can the sky's the limit on how far you can go with it with anything. It's basic form. It's just a conversation. It's a nice way to, and you actually find out who's important to people, which is sort of cool.
Right. Yeah, and I think it shifts the relationship that I have with somebody, that I am calling a patient, and they're calling me a healthcare professional. So when I get the matrix out, really what I'm doing is coming alongside of them, and looking at a problem that the two of us want to tackle together.
Collaboration.
Got it.
Yeah, and I'm just going to be a coach.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to help point some things out that might be of use to them. They're going to make some choices.
And in that frame, you can be an expert.
Yeah.
You have expertise in an area, just like a coach.
Yeah.
But
you also know when to get out of the way.
But I also know my limitations, and I can't go out on the field with you.
Right.
You're going to go out there and play.
Right.
It's really a different relationship.
It is
a nice way of getting us started. And that side-by-side thing is something else people come up with. The matrix is done side by side.
Yep.
It is.
Not inflicted upon somebody.
No.
Wow, this is so cool. Yeah. Well, you'll have to come back again and tell us more about this.
Good.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, I definitely want to hear about this.
The pain broadcasts, there we go, are always popular.
Sure.
Weird way of saying that, but yeah, people are interested because there's a lot of it out there.
There is.
Between all the surgeries and all the interventions that we have, plus the opioids that get in and muck up the works on this stuff.
It really does.
It's a big problem. A very big problem.
Yeah, and add alcohol to that, add, other drugs, legal, illegal.
Yep.
There's a lot of medicating that happens.
Yeah.
Yes. All in that holy grail of getting rid of the pain.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right. And that's
one of the first places that I go with people as we discuss values is, what gets in the way.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody, of course, is going to throw pain in there.
Well, yeah, in your clinic they will. Yep.
Yeah. And then I mentioned, of course, that pain never shows up alone. It always shows up with friends.
Oh, you're an expert.
Yeah.
Brings along discouragement, frustration, anger, disappointment, memories. And we also have this jury in our head commenting. And it's not the most friendly jury in the world. It's pretty harsh. And so, but before I get the matrix out, what I'll do on my little, just a pad of paper that I usually have with me, or a little teeny whiteboard like Phil uses there, what I draw is a tennis court.
Oh no! You're not going to. Oh, that's what I do.
Yeah.
I know. Oh, I don't know if you do this, Phil or Kevin, but let me ask. I'll describe what I do, and you tell me if you do this. So what I describe is this game that I'm going to be drawing here is a professional game. It's the U.S. Open, New York City.
High stakes.
Yeah.
And so I'll draw two tennis players, a net and a ball. And then I draw a large stadium around it. And I say that half the audience of this game is totally thrilled.
Yep.
Half the audience is really irritated and upset because the person that the people who are happy is watching that person's winning. The other people are watching the person who's losing, and they're irritated and upset. And I'll say, during the game, those people who are cheering for the winner, they're going to be nice to be around. They're going to buy souvenirs on their way out. They're not going to be irritated by the traffic on the way home. They're going to post it on social media.
Yep.
And these other people, they're going to be, pretty dicey to be around. They're going to be irritated with traffic. They're not going to go out to dinner, and they're not going to tell anybody on social media that they're there. And I said, both of these groups of people are completely hooked by that game.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow, cool.
And then I draw a elevated seat right at the net. And I said, somebody else is watching this game. They actually have a better perspective than anybody else. They are observing very, very closely, and that's the official. The official is on this elevated seat, looking down and noticing. Mm-hmm. And that's all they're doing. But the state that they come in with at the beginning of the game is exactly the state that they are in when they leave the game, and they are totally unaffected by the outcome.
Yeah.
And then what I'll do is start drawing different tennis balls. I'll say, here's an emotion tennis ball. Here's a sensation tennis ball. Here's a thought tennis ball. Here's a memory tennis ball. And then I'll ask, I said, what's it like when you get hooked by that emotion tennis ball or that sensation tennis ball? And they'll start telling me.
Yep.
Then I'll ask the question, would it be of value to you to learn how to look at it from a different perspective? And everyone says yes.
Cool. Well, you're going to have to come back and be on the Old Fart Tennis
play some tennis with us.
Okay.
Good. Well, we're planning videos. I already set up the YouTube channel called Old Fart Tennis. And that's perfect for Old Fart Tennis.
Yep.
It was like you were here on the planning stages. Evan.
Right.
Okay. Good.
We're going to have you back on. And
definitely.
That little routine.
Yeah.
Fart tennis. It's just too good.
But Kevin, I had heard that you mentioned that you are a tennis player and enjoy that. And
I gotta hang a racket or two up. I got extra rackets now, so I hang up, including. Let me tell you right now, I play a whole lot better game at tennis than I play guitar. So, tennis rackets up here, and just to let people know, if you're familiar with a tennis court, it has 4 nice little rectangles right in the middle called service courts. Mm-hmm. And those service courts lend themselves quite nicely to putting the different elements of the matrix in.
Oh, I'm learning.
And then in all tennis courts, there's actually a center net cord that pulls the net down to the right level. Well, there's your flow, you're noticing right there for the players. So we play with that some. But to bring the referee in, that's cool.
Yeah, I like that.
That's cool.
Nice addition.
Yeah, we it's just for people having fun to visualize things and do things. But I was just because I play tennis, I noticed the 4 service courts, and so do that. So we got some videos to shoot, stuff to do over there. And then that's part of our sports thing. I don't know if you know this, Evan, but the Matrix got into Major League Baseball and the Olympics and mixed martial arts. And
I've read some places where it's gone and where it's going.
That's sort of fun, where it just runs around and gets in the nooks and crannies of things, including chronic pain.
Yes.
Pain treatment clinics. So that's cool. Well, we'll be talking again. We'll have you back for that and for other reasons, because in a year or so you'll have more data. We want to hear your data.
Oh, sure.
That'll be fun to hear about.
Good.
Okay. So everybody will be, I'll be signing off. Evan, you and Phil, you don't have to sign off, but we'll sign off of the podcast. Please do look us up and get, and Evan, you too. I mean, you are like way qualified
Oh,
for
yeah.
certification. So you ought to come look us up.
Yeah.
And everybody else, that's how we pay the bills for this thing. So bye-bye. And we'll
Okay.
be back again soon with another episode of The Art of Being with the ACT Matrix.